Hey everyone, how's it going? This is Azren, the language nerd here, owner of the Calgary Language Nerds, and welcome to today's podcast episode and, of course, YouTube video. Today, I would like to talk about some tips to learn vocabulary in another language. The tips I share today are going to be primarily for beginner and intermediate level speakers of another language, not so much for advanced learners. Although the tips will apply to advanced learners too, but it's primarily targeted towards beginners and intermediates. Okay, I'll share my personal approach to learning vocabulary, but I'll also share some strategies I've seen work for other people. So myself, how do I learn vocabulary? Do I use flashcards? Do I rewrite words over and over? Do I have a magical system that I use that works way better than all the other systems? Yes, that's the answer. I have a magical system to learn vocabulary that works way better than every other system. Just kidding, I don't. So what do I do? Well, myself, I would say that the way I learn vocabulary in another language, I would say that it can be summed up by a quote on Instagram. Now, this is a quote that someone wrote literally in one of my Instagram post comments. I liked it a lot. It comes from it comes from Learn Spanish con Salsa. So Learn Spanish con Salsa on Instagram said, there's no need to study frequently used words in another language because they, by definition, appear frequently. Let me say that again. There's no need to study frequently used words in another language because they, by definition, appear frequently. I would say this sums up how I approach learning vocabulary in another language. As a beginner, especially as a beginner, and even as an intermediate learner, all, or at least most of the words you come across, they're going to be high frequency words. They're going to be words that you hear all the time in the language. For example, let's say you're an absolute beginner and you learn the word hello, you're going to hear hello all the time. If you learn the word or the phrase even, I am, well, you're going to say I am all the time. Or if you say I have, you're going to hear and say I have all the time. Even nouns, if I take some nouns like cell phone, you're going to need to say cell phone all the time, and people are going to use the word cell phone all the time. Laptop, computer, there are so many words that people just use all the time that I don't feel a need to do any formal vocabulary study, or very, very little. I just listen to the target language, I listen to people talk, and I talk to people. That's it. I listen to people talk in the context of in a conversation. Maybe I'm conversing with them, so I'm hearing them out. It could be in a podcast, it could be YouTube videos, it could be music. Generally speaking, I try to listen to content that is at my level, and that's where I really learn the most from, I would say, in terms of vocabulary, stuff that is at my level, not way above my level. If something is way above my level, it ends up being a bunch of gibberish, okay? And that's not good for learning vocabulary. So I'm listening to people that I talk to, I'm listening to content, videos, podcasts, audios, things like that. And then I talk to people, typically native speakers, but sometimes even very, very advanced speakers. And I communicate with them. I talk literally like this. I might text with them. I might do voice messages where I record something, send it. They record something, send it back. I listen. I look up words I don't know. And I organically learn a lot of words and phrases that way. Now, if you do want to do any formal vocabulary study, vocabulary memorization drills, for example, I don't think that's inherently bad. In fact, I do some. I don't do zero. I just do a little bit. So what kind of drills do I do? Well, I might reread words in a textbook or in my notes. I might reread it. I might quiz myself. Let's say I have in my notebook or my phone, often I take notes on my phone. Let's say I have one column of words in English, one column of words in Mandarin. I might cover one and see, okay, here's all the Mandarin words. Do I know what they all mean? Or I might do vice versa. I cover the Mandarin words and check, do I know what the I'll read the English word, I'll cover the Mandarin, and I'll see, do I know what the translations are in Mandarin? Sometimes I do a little bit of flashcards, not a ton, but a little bit. I might use an app like Anki, Anki, as I'm sure a lot of you have heard of before. Some people like to use Quizlet, Quizlet, I believe it's spelled. Quizlet's not bad, although it's got different features and functionalities in Anki, which we're not going to dive into today. But if you like that kind of study, I think that's just fine as well. Now, I have met language learners who, when they're studying vocabulary, they do it in a way where they're relying heavily upon flashcards. They use spaced repetition to learn new words and phrases. So spaced repetition, what is this? Well, spaced repetition would be you use an app such as Anki, a flashcard app, Anki, that's how you spell that. And what happens is that the way the app works is you see the flashcards, you see the flashcards that you are not remembering more often than the ones you are remembering. So let's say there's 100 words, you input 100 words today. Okay, tomorrow you open up the flashcard app and the app is going to show you all 100 words. Now, let's say out of those 100 words, you got 50 right. You are going through the app and 50 of them you knew, ding, 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 but 50 were wrong. On day 3, so the next day, day 2 rather, on day 2, you're going to see more of those 50 words you got wrong, and you're going to see less of the 50 words you got right. Day 4, same thing. Day 5. So you're seeing the words that you're seeing the words in your flashcard app that you know the least well, and you're seeing those ones more often. The words you know more, the words you're more familiar with, you see them less often. I hope that makes sense. So I know some people that live and breathe on these apps, and it works incredibly well for them. Not my style, but definitely can work. If you're the type of person who is going to study new words using, for example, flashcards, here are a few different general practices that will help you. First of all, generally speaking, learning words in phrases tends to be better than learning a word by itself. So learning, for example, what's something you might like? I like learning languages is a better flashcard to make than saying I like, just I like by itself. I like by itself will be harder to remember than I like learning languages. Tip number 2, and this builds on tip number 1. Tip number 2 is this. When you make your flashcard, let's say for the phrase I like, because you've decided you want to make phrases. When you make your flashcard for I like, you might want to make 7 different flashcards, multiple flashcards that use the word I like in different phrases. I like languages. I like ice cream. I like technology. I like reading. I like this. I like that. I like a whole bunch of things, because you'll get to practice the phrase I like in a whole bunch of different contexts. You know, if you watch that interview that Catherine and I did, Catherine is a Russian, Spanish, and English instructor at the Calgary Language Nerds. You know, we did an interview, would have been 2 weeks ago, I think. And one thing we talked about is how useful it can be to make 25 or a whole bunch of different sentences all around the same grammar point that you're trying to practice, right? If you're struggling with a specific tense, seeing 25 example sentences of that tense will really help you understand that grammar tense. Well, the same thing works for vocabulary. If you're trying to learn the word black or blue or big or small or a door or the phrase I like or whatever it is, a whole bunch of practice sentences that are meaningful to you, that's going to help make it more memorable, and you're going to get a whole bunch of repetitions in a whole bunch of different contexts, and it will help you remember the word a little bit faster. Now that takes me to number 3. Okay, tip number 3, if you're going to be using flashcards. Make example sentences that are meaningful to you. So, for example, let's go back to the phrase I like. Okay, if you write something generic like I like apples, well, Unless you really love apples and you are this apple connoisseur and you absolutely love apples, that's probably not the best sentence. You want to think about things that you actually genuinely like, things that will create a powerful emotional response in you. Heck, it might even be easier to go in the route of don't like in a sense. Maybe you get a bigger response with things you don't like. Maybe have you heard of that thing called tryptophobia? I think it's tryptophobia, something like that. It's the fear of a whole bunch of small holes close together. So if you see a beehive and you got all those holes close together, some people are freaked out by that. Well, you might literally, if you wanted to memorize the phrase "I don't like," what you might do is and you had tryptophobia, you literally might say, "I don't like beehives," card number 1. "I don't like honeycombs." I'm trying to think of things that have holes close together because you really don't like those. And you're like, ugh. And because you're so ugh about those, you're going to remember that phrase, "I don't like," really, really, really fast. So think about phrases that when you're making your flashcards, think about phrases that are meaningful to you. Okay? Tip number 4, if you're going to be making a lot of flashcards, put a picture with your flashcards, right? Put a picture in there. Put a picture of a honeycomb that scares the living daylights out of you because you don't like holes that are close together. Right? Put an actual picture in there. That's really going to make you go, yeah, I don't like that. Or if, maybe if you're learning colors or something, even something as basic as colors, right? Maybe you've got a beautiful red Corvette and you love your red Corvette. Well, you might go snap a picture of it and throw that in your flashcard. Literally put that picture in there, right? So this kind of using visuals will help you a lot as well. And tip number 5, I think one last tip, is that number 5? I think it is. The final tip I'll give for flashcards is take your time in making the flashcards. In fact, it's the process of making the flashcard should actually be relatively memorable. So you have to review the flashcard less frequently. So if you did everything I just said, let's say you're trying to remember let's take a phrase like something with "I want." Maybe you want to learn how to say "want." Okay. And maybe you want to learn, let's just take want. That's a good one. You want to learn how to say "I want." That's what you're trying to learn. Well, you're going to make a list of things that you want. So you'll write, I want a new computer for Christmas. I want a new computer for Christmas. You're going to write that phrase in your target language, right? Or in English, and you'll go to your target language. And then you're going to put a picture of the exact computer you want, right? Like that's going to take 10 minutes to make that flashcard, maybe, but that's okay. And then you'll write, I want something else. And whatever something else you put, you'll put a picture. So it'll take time to think of all these things you want. It'll take time to make 10 flashcards, all with the phrase I want. It'll take time to put all those pictures in, right? It's going to take time, but that's going to really help drive that phrase I want into your brain. Okay, so if you're going to go down the route of flashcards, that's a really good route to go down. Now, what's another way to remember vocabulary? I'll give one last piece of advice. Actually, 2 last pieces of advice for remembering vocabulary. Okay, the second last advice, one more piece here, rather last, second last. So second last piece of advice in this podcast and video is going down a rabbit hole of one particular genre of content. This can work for beginners, but I think particularly can work well for intermediate level speakers of another language. So let's say, for instance, you're an intermediate level speaker and you want to learn a lot about cooking. What you might do is you're going to only watch cooking videos on YouTube for the next month. All you watch is cooking videos. Why? Because by watching a whole bunch of cooking videos, you're going to be exposed to so many cooking and food related words. Another variation of this is, let's say you find a specific person that you like to consume. Maybe it's a singer, maybe it's a vlogger, maybe it's I don't know, a political commentator, maybe it's whoever it is. It doesn't actually an artist, someone who talks on the internet. Okay, what you might do is you might religiously consume that person's content. Consume it like every day, as often as you can, because you'll start to absorb the types of, how do I say this? You'll absorb the words that that person uses in particular, because everyone has certain words that they just use because that's how they talk. But you'll also absorb the words related to the subject matter that they discuss. So if they're a musician and they're talking a lot about music, well, you're going to learn a lot of music related words, and you're going to learn a lot of words that that person particularly uses because they're using them all the time. And so you hear them all the time. So go down a rabbit hole of either a specific genre, cooking, art, music, dance, fashion, whatever it is, right? Language. Go down that rabbit hole, and or pick a person and consume a lot of that one person's content. The final thing I'll give for vocabulary is writing. Write every day, or as often as you can. You know, people often ask me, Azren, if I have 10 minutes to practice my target language, what should I do with that 10 minutes? Most people I talk to default into using some kind of an app. They default into using Duolingo. They default into using whatever they use, which is fine. Nothing wrong with that. I want to propose an alternative, which for many of you, I think will be more effective. If you have 10 minutes free, 15 minutes free, 5 minutes free, you're sitting on the toilet and you have 5 minutes on the toilet, you have 10 minutes before a meeting starts, you have a 15-minute commute on the bus, whatever it is, you're walking and you're on your phone. What can you do for 10 minutes? Well, here's something really easy. Write 5 sentences on your phone. Open up the Notes app on your phone, type out 5 different sentences. You can push yourself to write sentences in tenses that are hard for you, grammatical tenses that are hard for you. You can try to incorporate words that you were just, maybe you're someone who studies vocabulary, so you can incorporate words in your 5 sentences that you were studying just the other day. Maybe you've been listening to this one song on repeat, and you're going to write 5 sentences about that song, or maybe sentences from the song itself that you remember. 5 sentences. That's a great way. That's a way better, in my perspective, for many people, that's a much better use of 10 minutes than keeping your streak up on Duolingo. Now, I know you don't want to break your streak. The Duolingo owl makes you feel bad about it. Fair enough. But just remember that that's a reasonably ineffective way of learning another language. It's not completely devoid of merit, but there are many better ways to use your time, I would say. Okay, so that's another great way to practice, to really bring passive vocabulary and make it active. Passive vocabulary meaning if you hear it, you understand, but you couldn't use it yourself. It wouldn't come to you if you had to say it. Well, the writing those sentences every day when you have 5-10 minutes, that's a great way to take passive vocabulary and make it active. Switch it over to that active side of your brain. Although I don't know if there's an active side of the brain, but you get what I'm saying. Okay, awesome. Well, I hope that was helpful. Yeah, hope it was helpful for you guys. And have a wonderful rest of your morning, afternoon, evening, night, whatever it is for you. Please don't forget to follow me on any social media platforms you use. My username is the same on all of them. It's Polyglot Azren, POLYGLOT AZ or ZREN, or of course just search Azren the Language Nerd. That's AZ or ZREN the Language Nerd. Also, if you want to work with myself or any of the instructors on my team at the Calgary Language Nerds, and you want to take some private lessons, you want to take some small group lessons, you want to learn with us, please visit azrenthelanguagenerd.com. That's AZ or ZREN thelanguagenerd.com, and you can book a time to speak with me from there. Have a wonderful rest of your day, and we'll chat soon. Bye-bye.